In one of the last major acts of the Biden administration, they've appealed a Tennessee law that prohibits experimental gender procedures on children. And if you look at it critically, it's kind of an odd decision. So, where did this transgender thing come from in the first place? If you're an uncritical thinker with a malleable brain, you'll be perplexed at that last question. If you're observant, you'll know what I mean. 10 years ago, this was non existent, and then suddenly it turned into a phenomena that infiltrated all levels of culture. Things of this nature typically come from multiple forces merging. Our brains like to wrap around, we like the idea of single sources when rarely it works that way. Now, what I'm about to bring up in terms of these sources are massive oversimplifications. Um, each one of these items could be an hour or two video all on its own. And we've talked about some of these in other videos. So, various seeds of thought have been planted in the universities. Frankfurt School inspired cultural manipulations, extremist late wave feminism, and queer theory of form concepts that are percolated into education. Some of these are overtly Marxist, while others seek to undermine Western cultural norms under the banner of liberation. Martin Rothblatt, a billionaire who transitioned to female, and by the way, not to be a dick, but if being a billionaire and this is the best you get from it, I wouldn't want to be someone at my income level trying to do this. Upset. Anyways, uh, Martin is an ardent supporter of transhumanism, which is kind of transgenderism on steroids. Basically, it's the idea that all things the human body have can be transcended, replaced, upgraded, including our very personalities and such. Rothblatt ended up sinking a great deal of money into transgender advocacy groups. This money initially found its way into colleges and then into legacy media. Uh, then we also have to deal with what I like calling peak Obamanism. Obamaism. President Obama, and essentially his the height of his rhetoric and philosophy hitting our culture. Now, radical progressives have always whined at the slow pace of progress. The two elections of Obama convinced them that they had reached the end of history. During Obama's second term, an acceleration of progressivism would open channels that transgender ideas would ride on through. Then we have Larry Fink. Essentially, he brought in the idea of ESG and stakeholder capitalism. Stakeholder capitalism literally is anything but capitalism. Essentially, it means everybody owns the business uh, equally or with greater value than the actual shareholders. Essentially, uh, Fink is the head of BlackRock, used the vast sums of money that BlackRock had accumulated to essentially start forcing ESG down throats of other businesses. Now, ultimately, the whole transgender thing was a logical direction for progressivism to go. Now, progressives themselves may have not been pining away for it, but once there was momentum, it captured the imaginations of many of them, adding to their belief system, likely as a newly revealed sacrament. Now, this would make the fringiness of this movement swell with the ranks of crusading soldiers. Then, on top of all this, social media created a venue for people to seek attention and approval by claiming to be, or actually becoming, or pushing their children to become trans. All this starts essentially occurring. Now, obviously, the stuff in the colleges starts earlier, but it all starts coming to fruition right about 2014. That's kind of a critical point where everything starts happening. Uh, and oddly enough, probably ended up partially resulting in Trump's first election victory. So, why do people buy into this transgenderism stuff? Well, many people are oblivious to the nature of the permanence of what is being done, including puberty blockers. Public figures falsely claim the blockers are fully reversible when in fact there's always going to be some repercussions out of it, and some of them may be permanent depending on how long they're used. Another problem is short term thinking. A lot of people are grasping on to the here and now and not bothering to look what's going to come from several years down the road from doing this stuff. Some people love basking in the glow of public affirmation and don't care about what's going to happen later. Some people are completely unaware that this is sterilization. Some people are also unaware that this is permanent sexual dysfunction. Uh, and you're also unaware that trans people, once they go past a certain point, are essentially patients for life. They will be under the need for constant medical attention for as long as they live. So, why did we end up where we're at now? Well, there's been some pretty massive pushback on this transgender stuff. One might look at the 2024 election as a major refutation of this. So, why does the United States versus Skrmetti uh, lawsuit come up challenging Tennessee SB1, which specifically prohibits medical providers from prescribing puberty blockers, hormone therapy, or performing surgeries for the purpose of gender transitions for the individuals under 18 years old? Why now? Why after the election? Why in this lame duck period? Well, part of it could be the inevitability of it. It is part of the Democratic agenda, and this law was upheld in appeals. Logically, it would need to be challenged by the Democrats at some point, but I find the timing of it a little questionable. Why go for a guaranteed loss? Because the Justice Department has to know this isn't going to go through, or is at least going to get mauled pretty heavily, at least their positioning. Part of it's fundraising. Almost everything that happens in the political world revolves around fundraising. Uh, the fact that this is going on is probably one of the few things out there that's probably generating money for the DNC right now. But one of the things that, uh, looking at the way the case is being argued, the lawyer who is working, I believe, for the ACLU, uh, is not delivering particularly competent arguments. In fact, he's getting kind of hammered by the various justices who are challenging him on various points. So to me, although I'm not suggesting the lawyer is deliberately throwing it, the lawyer may not be up to the task of this particular case. It almost seems like this is a deliberate attempt to spike the issue. So why would you do that? Well, let's say you know, but the Supreme Court is going to rule against you. And let's say you're one of the cooler heads of the Democratic Party, and you're thinking, it would be great if this wasn't an issue we had to contend with in 2026. So you float it now uh, under Biden, who's not very popular with the Democrats right now. The issue gets basically the Tennessee law gets upheld by the Supreme Court, essentially allowing all the other states to fall in line and do the same thing. and essentially the issue gets killed. Whereas by 2026, although people may say, well, yes, we are all for transgender rights, but it doesn't pay talk about what laws you're going to pass or how you're going to do things because you have a Supreme Court decision that's pretty much locked everything down. So, what I'm thinking is that, in fact, this was a deliberate goal. It's essentially for Biden to take the fall for the transgender issue uh, by basically killing it dead so that it's not a problem for the Democratic Party to deal with in the future. All right, so in the comments below, what do you think? I knew I kind of jumped into so some of the topics here are pretty broad brush, and I understand that, but I didn't want this to be a 3 hour video. So if there's something in there that you want to expand on, fine. And again, I did specifically say that I know some of the issues are far more complex and I've used a lot of oversimplifications. Please smash the like button. If the YouTube algorithms brought you here and you're not a regular subscriber, please check out my other titles. You may find things you like. Consider subscribing. And if you know someone who might find this interesting, share it with them. Thank you for spending time with me this evening. Hope to see you again in a future video.